All right, so Kalamazi's busy streaming, but we've pulled up his stream to help do our intro for today's day.
Here I am.
The fact that we had his stream pulled up is one of the dumbest things
I
ever.
will copyright strike this time. It's okay.
All right, okay to business. All right.
And so Calavazi's streaming in the background. If he's talking, don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about him. It's I got pretty strong echo cancellation on, so he shouldn't be too. And plus, anyways, his stream is good content. So today we have the Nexus Princess kill coming in for Liquid. Finally,
Dude,
somebody.
It was
More than 300 pulls on a 6th boss. This is joining Halandris as like one of the oldest bosses to not be a penultimate boss, or like Anduin was sort of end bossy, Lord of Dread Rygalon, but like we're talking about Sepulcher bosses, which was one of the hardest tiers of all time.
It's one of those things that I woke up 9 a.m. Showed up in the studio like 9:30.
Yeah,
they started pulling the fight, and I'm just watching them prog. So like last night, they were at 3 minutes 15 seconds, so just halfway through the fight. Boss is at 50% HP, like I was talking about. They've lost it on pull. I wasn't convinced that they were even necessarily able to kill it. However, whenever I showed this morning, boss was at 49.5 at the same point. I was like, oh, yeah, a little bit more damage. That's not looking too bad. Maybe this is actually doable. But they were very inconsistent, which is kind of the story of this entire fight. However, it was during a block that you started casting. They really just like, I don't even know. They started entering P3 pulls, and then getting like all 20 players into P3, doing the res strat where they're APTing consistently, or at least as consistent as they reasonably can. They also figured out a way to be able to maintain one of the battle reses by time dilating Scott on the second tank buster in the third phase. That'll let them get to the 5-minute APT, which allowed them to have a B res that they could actually use on anybody.
If they had a death after 4:30, it was like more okay. Ideally, they wouldn't have, and they would get to save that APT into the final enrage, where it's really good. But on the kill, they did have that death and res, so it added a little bit of safety, but you still can't have a death for the first 4.5 minutes, which is a lot.
There was a little bit of tension, too, because they had 1.7% wipe and then 1.6% wipe.
When you say 1.7, you mean they had a 0.7%.
Yes. One wipe that was 0.6%. Yes, one wipe that was 0.6% and one wipe that was 0.7%. And
there was one of those as a crash as well. There's a lot of pain on those attempts.
But they had 3 good pulls in the span of probably 45 minutes, which is unprecedented. And then on the third one, they were just actually able to down the boss. Now there's a question as to, is Echo going to be able to rebuttal, which I think is actually a pretty interesting question. I suspect that the answer is probably yes, but there's an issue where it's not 100% yes, right? Echo's best pull at their current time of recording this is 2.68. Coming into today, their best pull was like 3.5, so this 2.68 is within like an hour maybe of them starting their day, so they're starting off pretty strong, so I suspect that Echo is possibly able to kill it, but they're doing it with a much different composition. They're, instead of playing that Guardian Druid, they're playing this Brewmaster Monk that you see on screen here. They're also playing the Balance Druid instead. One of the big differentiators is actually the Devastation versus Augmentation Evoker decision.
And the extra mage.
I really like the mage.
One extra mage. Yeah.
I like the extra mage, and I like the extra Enhancement Shaman. I think that both of those are super valuable. But yeah, I mean, in general, it's not one of those fights that composition actually changes too much. It's 100% about getting this entire composition that both of these guilds are running to the end of the fight.
Now, Method are also on this fight and are also at a very low percentage here. They're playing an entirely different comp, too. They're playing the Feral Druid instead for their Mark of the Wild. So we've seen all 3 of the different Druid specs that exist this tier being used to bring Mark of the Wild, which is pretty cool.
Method actually started their day at like 7.5%, so they have a new best pull as well at 5.44%.
And they were briefly, like this time yesterday, they actually overtook Echo
that was weird.
For World Second for a little while. They are definitely in the hunt here for trying to kill this boss second.
Method had a really bad Brood Twister kill. Basically, they took more pulls and more time than their competitors to be able to get that. But Nexus Princess, this is crazy. Like the fact that they're actually in a race with Echo and Liquid to be able to kill this boss, it's a bit surprising. Although I'm not shocked. I do still think that Method still has kind of some of the same similar issues whenever we're talking about their potential equity of winning like the world first race, of like having to prog a boss from ahead at some point.
I will say though, they did pioneer the 2-tank strategy with 2 blood decays on Brood Twister, which is a really encouraging sign for their chances too. That's the level of kind of innovation and actually trailblazing a strat that needs to exist, right? Like you need to see them coming in with something better than Liquid and Echo have, not just copying what Liquid and Echo do and hope to do it better, because that ain't gonna work. You're always playing from behind if you're trying to do that.
You can copy Nexus Princess though and be able to kill it ahead of.
And, I mean, at this point, that's what you should be trying to do.
Yes.
But that's a good way to get second. That's not a good way to get first.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100% agree. And so basically, then after that, very hype. I think that. Like you're saying, rarefied air in terms of bosses, in terms of 300 pull mid.
And it died right at the start of it, like right as you saw those 6 slices come out, it died just exactly how we were hoping to see it go. I think there are some pretty valid complaints from players that like this was tuned too tightly.
I think
for Race to World First. Anytime you do a 1-tank strategy and it's kind of needed for the damage, that does feel bad for the players in a lot of cases. So that being said, it was definitely a spectacle to watch, and I am glad to have seen it. I do think this is probably the very upper end of where they should tune bosses in this level in the raid, and it would probably be better if usually they hit a little lower.
I think for both Brood Twister and for Nexus Princess, I think they need to be lurking to nerf them on the reset.
Yeah.
I think that I would be very concerned about re-clear just in general. I mean, re-clear would be brutal. You're playing no Vantus Runes.
Yeah, I mean, the gear, both of these bosses are nerfed substantially by item level, which...
The problem is that you can't get to that in part of the fight consistently, and so you're not going to be able to, like a corpse there.
Part of the reason you can't get to the fight consistently is that you don't have that much stamina, so an extra 3 item levels of, like, re-clear and vaults for stamina help a lot on both sides of the coin, right? Like, it is, and then same with Brood Twister, right? Killing adds faster, lets you get more boss damage. It adds a lot of safety there. So I actually don't think it's a huge... It'll be that bad for re-clear. I just think the problem is that there's a lot of guilds that can kill Rashanon this week that are 2 months away from being able to kill Nexus Princess or Brood Twister. Brood Twister being the much easier of the two, and still being way harder than reasonable.
Okay, you're pulling Brood Twister right now. What do you think would be an appropriate nerf to that fight?
Probably like the tank damage of the spiders, the health of all adds.
All adds, not the boss.
I would probably add like a delay on the spiders before they start auto-attacking after they spawn to try and stop just people randomly getting killed, and the incentive for the 3-tank and the difficulty on the 2-tank strat. I don't know. And then maybe just some of the damage of, say, the swirl. The problem is that I like the swirlies being the hard part of the fight. I think they're really good swirlies on that fight.
Okay.
But yeah, I would do a pretty comprehensive suite of nerfs to that encounter. And then Ky'veza, I don't know. I feel like Ky'veza you could just nerf like Queensbane dot again. Like that is really nasty and it's kind of unavoidable.
Massacre damage maybe.
And then just take some health off the boss as well.
I think I would be looking to hit probably like 10% health off the boss, which gut reaction it seems a bit high, but at the same point I think that there's just like a lot of difficulty because like you said they're gonna get 3 item levels from this re-clear or something like that. That's only 3% damage. That's still not enough to bring the tank back into the mix in terms of like damage gained.
Right.
I would then, with like a 10% HP nerf, I would then make the tank dot persist through death to stop them from
remove any possibility of one tank.
It's not supposed to be one tanked. Basically, you can't like bubble the dot. You can't AMS the dot or anything like that. So it's not supposed to be one tankable. It's just a slight oversight in the fact that it gets removed.
And the fact that it only is done 3 times per phase and it resets between the end of one phase and the start of the next really removes a lot of the pressure that would normally be there. Like if it didn't reset between the phases, for instance, that would make this completely not possible.
It's just like a very slight oversight. But I that's why I would hit it with like a 10% HP nerf and then remove the possibility of ever one tanking this fight again.
I think also you could make the egg breaks a little bit more favorable on Brood Twister, just like increase the hitbox of the eggs for the purposes of being hit by the breaks.
Would you ever do 2 seconds on the break?
Probably not. I think the timing of the eggs is fine. It's just like there's a lot of spaces where it like kind of feels like both people are there, but they're not actually, and they needed to hug in even tighter.
Okay.
And I would just increase the size of the egg hitbox to be broken. Yeah.
Quick question. I mean, not to linger on too much. How does the weaker feel in that fight?
It's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
The like systematizing of that fight is not. I mean, it's hard, right? There's a lot of prep that needs to be done to be good at that fight. but it doesn't feel like stupid weak aura land.
Okay,
or anything like that.
See, that's kind of always the worry is that fight feels like a dumb weak aura fight.
There's not really a huge amount of like weak aura. If you use the Northern Sky weak aura pack on that fight, they updated it to just basically do a lot of everything smart out of the box, and
that's great. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so that's basically what we've seen.
Yeah,
kind of prepping for the re-clear as well. That's kind of what we.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that tomorrow as well as we approach the re-clear.
We hope to see those things again. I don't think it's like guaranteed, but I think it seems incredibly likely.
And those nerfs are, I think, less important for the Race to World First than they are for the
everybody else.
World 400th guild that is now working on. I don't know how many guilds are working on Brood Twister right now, but it's going to be a lot.
There was like 100 2 days ago, so I suspect there's probably about 200 now.
There are 265 guilds at 4 of 8 as of time of recording, so that is a massive pile-up building up on. There are more guilds at 4 of 8 than there are at 1 of 8. Which is almost unheard of in a tier. There's so many, like most tiers, you'll usually see a pile up somewhere before there.
This needs to change.
In my opinion, I think it's tough because the better way for this to have worked would be for Sikron and Rashanon to both be tuned like 7 eye levels harder. But since that's not possible, at this point, you can't go back in and buff those.
Yes.
Instead, I think we need to kind of remove this brutal wall that is Ovanax and Ky'veza. And make that a little bit more of a smooth ramp up towards the Silken Court difficulty, which is what Liquid are pulling now. As of right now, they have gone dark on their streams. I actually don't know even if they're still pulling now or
they
what
were
what
pulling
they're up
about
to.
15 minutes ago. I don't know. I guess I don't know if they're technically pulling now, but
yeah. So they pulled a little bit on stream. They did like 6 pulls on stream. We saw the first few minutes of the fight. We got a bunch of timers, a bunch of good information. I was actually surprised they kept the streams on for that because that probably had a lot of good info for Echo on how that fight worked.
It seems similar to raid testing.
So they changed a couple of crucial things that I think are very important strategically.
Okay, what are they?
So the web bombs now always target red mark players rather than ranged players, which is huge for how you can construct your groups and your strategy.
Wait, the web bombs always target? Oh, okay.
That's like massive for how you would strategize that fight.
There's better consistency as to the drops. Which
you can plan that out a lot more, and it also removes a ranged melee requirement for numbers on the fight, which is
yes. There's going to be like this is the only amount of melee we can have here.
Yeah, and I think it just also makes the fight a lot better, but I think that exact change from PTR, if Liquid had known they would be showing that change, they would have gone dark before pulling the boss at all, because I think that actually probably gives Echo a decent couple of hours worth of good thinking that they can do.
Anything else? Because I think that like a lot of the stuff that we saw...
A lot of the rest of the stuff is as expected, I think,
We're basically, they were spawning orbs at specific times, and then they were going to have to figure out specific timings for how they were going to maneuver relative to one another. So basically the mythic mechanic on that fight is that there's rage and paranoia debuff. You start on a boss, you get a circle, you walk in the circle of the boss, it gives you a buff, and then you have to every so often the boss does like a rain cast and it drops like these orbs corresponding to your color, red and purple, and then you have to basically move, not touch, not collide with one another, and soak the orbs. And it's pretty tricky, but I think it's going to end up being like a dance more so than like a free-for-all run around kind of
Yeah, the numbers on that fight also look pretty intense. That boss has twice the health of Ky'veza, which was already
2 bosses.
It is 2 bosses. But you don't gain double the damage on 2 bosses.
Well, there's a damage amp.
Yeah, there is a damage amp, but not that often. And there's a lot of other stuff going on in that fight. I don't know. Either way, I suspect this is probably tuned sort of for next week's gear at this point.
I think that Ky'veza was tuned for next week's gear, too.
I think you might be right about that. But yeah, I mean, Liquid going dark here, there's of course always people that are mad anytime any team goes dark, but I think at this point people have kind of gotten used to the concept of like, okay, if a team is ahead, in particular if they're pulling a new boss that the other team isn't on yet, and it's getting late at night, that's the kind of time when you're going to turn your streams off and pull a bit in the dark.
I will say that I was a bit surprised that Liquid at 3 p.m. decided to pull 5 pulls on stream and then go dark. That seemed maybe a little bit weird, especially... Are they going to pull on stream tomorrow?
Yeah. Well, because you pull on stream tomorrow because, by the time when you're starting pulling, that's right when Echo's going to bed, right?
Yeah.
It is a little bit tough. Obviously, there's a huge competitive advantage in not doing it, but...
I mean, there's a competitive advantage in not streaming at all.
Right, exactly. You should never... If your goal was to win this race only, and you had all of these resources that they currently have...
You would never stream.
You would just turn off your streams, and that would give you your best chance of winning this tier. I guess you would turn on your streams, do splits and stuff, get helpers, and then you turn it off for any of the prog, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is that, of course, costs you long-term, right? And so we kind of have to get this balance of we want an event with sponsors and viewers and all the good stuff, right? but we don't want to reveal the few most crucial hours of Prague. And those most crucial hours are definitely working on a new boss. We're about to go to bed. The other team's about to wake up. Right? Those are the times whenever any two of those three things basically are true, that's when there's the best argument for turning the streams off for a bit. But I do agree with you that like even just showing the boss at all,
that was a bit weird.
I was expecting them to just completely turn off the streams, even if they'd done it earlier in the afternoon, but they decided to pull some on stream, which was awesome to see.
Whenever they ripped to pulling the boss, I was like, oh, they're just going to stream it. Like that was kind of
exactly. And then from that point, like it seems pretty unlikely that they're going to give away that much more about the fight.
They already gave away.
Those first 5 pulls are probably more important than the next 40 in terms of how much info is going to be leaked.
Yeah, well, it's fine. I suspect that they'll be pulling the boss tomorrow. So just kind of talking about our predictions, our expectations. I give Echo probably an 85 to 90% chance of killing. No, maybe even higher. Now seeing them hit at 3%, 95% chance of killing Nexus Princess, but it's not 100, which is actually very scary because this boss is so inconsistent that there's an opportunity for it to not die. But I suspect that Echo's going to be able to kill it.
I think 95-ish is probably accurate. Yeah, in that range.
I think that method probably also kills it.
I think their chance is probably closer to like 65, 70, something like that.
Yeah. So both of them are likely to kill it. It's not guaranteed by any means, which is the problem with a boss like this. And then for Liquid, I actually have no idea what I even expect from Silken Court.
Yeah, we'll have to see when the Dark Mode comes back on tomorrow exactly how far they've gotten in it.
I've seen some of the stuff in passing whenever we were like walking by production, but
no leak.
I was not lingering and watching, so I actually have no idea what's even going on with any of it anyways. So like I couldn't even leak if I wasn't even trying because I'm...
That's good.
I also don't even... I could kind of tell what... Like if I'm watching it intently, I could tell what's going on, but I feel like it's one of those things that it's...
There is definitely a lot of stuff happening on that fight, and it's pretty hard to see exactly what wiped them
exactly.
at any given point.
That is, I think, that was one of the characteristics of Halandris that made it hard to cast like a race roll first caster, and I suspect that it's going to be very similar, where it's not always clear what wiped them. More often than not, it's probably going to be somebody died with a web tether, and then they didn't. They weren't able to
didn't go through something like that. That was my prediction before we started pulling of like what's going to be causing the most wipes today.
Something that was really weird was that. The red orbs blowing up actually didn't blow up.
Doesn't blow up the red people,
Yeah, it didn't blow up the red players, which then allowed Liquid to see...
That was how they got in those first 5 pulls so deep into the fight, was because you just kind of 10-manned the middle of the fight.
They saw so much on stream, by the way.
Yeah, like, again, I think if they'd known that was going to happen, they would have turned the streams off.
They saw probably 5 minutes of that boss, which is... a crazy amount.
That also strikes me as an oversight. It seems like if a moat blows up, it should just wipe the entire team.
I tend to agree. Somebody said that to me, and I go, why? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I guess you'd never kill the boss that way anyways, though, because, like...
Yeah, you can't kill the boss.
You can't kill the boss with 10 of your people dead. Like, well...
Maybe you could limp over the finish line in the last, like, 30 seconds or something.
What's the enrage?
That's the question. I don't know.
I have no idea either.
Yeah.
Don't matter.
Probably not. It's probably a tightly tuned enrage given what we've seen so far this year. So.
Any predictions for Liquid or Echo that you think are surprising?
Nothing over the next day. It's going to be, very important for Echo to kill this boss soon to stay in the race, I'd say.
Shout out the Frost Death Knights.
Shout out the Frost Death Knights. Yeah, welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back.
We missed you on Ky'veza. And a fond farewell to Beast Mastery Hunter.
Oh, is that one dead?
Actually, I don't know. It's not because you still want a hunter, but I feel like it's maybe MM from now on. I don't know. I didn't see what even they started pulling with on that fight. Looks like Warcraft Logs doesn't know either their last recorded pull.
I have no idea.
Yeah, okay, actually, hang on. We can see what they started pulling with here, right?
Oh, what is this?
Last pull, last pull. Okay, no, never mind. There's some page somewhere where you can see what... I think it's Radar.io that has it. But yeah, anyways. Whatever.
We'll be back tomorrow.
We will be back tomorrow.
Hopefully, probably be talking about what? Reset? What happened with
Reset, what's coming up with that, and...
I guess there could be a catastrophe that happened that we would talk about, but I suspect that...
Yeah, I mean...
Is unlikely.
There's a chance Silken Court is dead this time tomorrow. It's pretty low, though.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right. Later.
Goodbye.